Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second virtual Ethical Gem Fair. This is on the heels of a physical gem fair in 2020, but obviously we have not been able to meet since then. So we welcome you all and so happy to connect with you and have this opportunity to connect. I know this has been a crazy year and a half or so, so I hope that wherever you are in the world, and I know that there's a lot of you tuning in from lots of different places, I hope that you are well physically, emotionally, and mentally. We're here to connect. We are happy to actually have the opportunity to meet with you, speak to you, and we have 3 days of our fair, today, tomorrow, on Friday, and on Saturday. And today and tomorrow, we will actually be available for 2 blocks of time. This morning time in Pacific time, 7 to 9:30, and then from 3 to 5:30 Pacific. So we have sessions like this one devoted to some interesting subjects and some interesting takes and viewpoints from our different suppliers and maybe a few guests. And you can check out the schedule under sessions, or actually it might be under schedule in the top banner. Immediately following this session, which will end about 8 a.m. Pacific, you'll be invited to the lounge and you can meet with all of the suppliers. We'll have a table and you can turn on your camera or mic or not and interact and actually kind of see what the suppliers and the tables have to offer. It's pretty convivial, so welcome you to do that. Friday follows the same 2-session block, morning and afternoon in Pacific time. And then there's a bonus social hour starting at 5:30 Pacific on Friday. It will involve talking heads in bubbles in a lounge. That's all I'm going to say. You have to come, you have to experience it, pour yourself something, and hope that you can actually make it. So Saturday, we will have 1 block of time from 8 a.m. to 11 Pacific. That's 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern. And during this entire time, we invite you to connect in the chat. You can DM individual participants. You can join us at the tables in the lounge. You can also check out our booths. There's a section of booths where it gives a little bit more background and information and some links. So in case you're not feeling up to joining us at the table, you can actually check us out there and get some more information. So we're going to get started with our opening session of what is an ethical gemstone. And this could obviously mean something completely different to nearly anyone that you ask. And each of our suppliers has kind of a unique philosophy that they will share, and also the practicality of that philosophy in how they kind of execute on that. So briefly, just an introduction. Again, afterwards, we'll invite you to the lounge and you're welcome to join us there. We're just very happy that you're here. And if you care, if you're curious, we welcome you, and hopefully you will find your people. So I'm going to let Hewan start with the what is an ethical gemstone for her and her experience. Hewan Zewdi of Agari Treasures. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Monica, and good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first morning session on the June event. We thank you all for being here and for listening, for being watching, and with our all suppliers and our groups. I am Hewan Zewdi, as she introduced me, and the founder of Agari Treasures. I'm a supplier of Ethiopian gemstones, and the subject we'll be discussing this morning will be what is ethical means for individually for each our suppliers. For me, it has been like sourcing consciously our gemstones, how we get it, how we find it, how we cut it, and what we get involved into, what is our mission behind it, and what we do, and how we bring it to the market has been ethical. I define that as how we're sourcing each of us individually from every different and every region, every mining site, everybody has a unique way of contributing to the ethical suppliers. And for me, it has been, since Ethiopia is a new source of Ethiopian gemstone source, and I've been the experience of education, knowledge of gemstones in the state, I've been contributing to that, to the country, to the miners, and working closely with artisan miners and supporting the lapidary, and pretty much educating my customers and my clients as I'm bringing out how I'm bringing my stones, how we finding it, what we do, and what we're giving back. Is that's what I define as ethical suppliers. So I'll pass it to our next group to contribute their side, their view and their meanings and their missions. Thank you for watching.
So I think technically I'm next. So I'm Monica Stephenson of Onza Gems, and I also am a collaborator with Moyo Gems. And my general philosophy has been that ethics or responsibility to me in the gemstone industry involves knowing where something comes from, but especially who it comes from, and also the impact on that community. So in 2014, I took a trip to East Africa and visited mines, and really had finally a true understanding of the amount of work necessary in order to get gems actually physically out of the ground, and the fact that that community who's working so hard is disproportionately not participating, not benefiting from all of the benefits that can come from gemstones and the sale of gemstones. So I really feel strongly that education is a key component of responsibility. And so, and that's really the only thing keeping that community from fully participating. So my business model is that I normally travel several times a year to East Africa. I buy gems from brokers and dealers there for Onza, and I import those gemstones, usually rough. Sometimes I'm fortunate enough to find cutters who can cut to the level that we sort of look for and ask for. But most of the time it's rough, and I have artisans at every step of the way, including the cutting here in the US to process the gemstones. When those gems are sold, 10% goes back to learning and education initiatives that benefit communities that are on the ground in Kenya and Tanzania. And usually that's through Gem Legacy, which is a 501c3 that allows direct interaction and checking on these initiatives. More recently, I have been more focused on empowering women in the supply chain whenever possible, and that has led to the development of collaborating with Stuart who's here, and also PACT, an NGO, and Tawoma, an NGO in country in Tanzania, to bring women's gemstones from women miners, artisanal miners, who are usually very invisible, bringing them into the market and giving them some visibility and some structure and some support there on the ground in Tanzania. So for me, ethics involves really understanding truly where things come from, who they come from, and then trying to support those communities to not just buy from them, but actually kind of help them participate more fully. So you're welcome to come to our table and talk later. I'm going to hand this off to Ian Bone of Capricorn Gems.
Thanks, Monica. Yes, welcome everybody this morning to our, I guess, second virtual gem show. Certainly not our second ethical gem show. We've been hosting these shows now for the last 3 or 4 years. Started in the UK, and now we've brought them into the US, and continuing on with this model, and I guess looking into the future in terms of different models or different types of shows, depending on obviously the circumstances that prevail at the time. I'm actually coming to you from Denver in the US at this point of time. Normally I'm in Australia, but just happen to be in the US now, and here for a few months. So the times coincide with, I think, the situation much more readily, so we're not necessarily spread all around the world at all different times, which is a good thing, and it's a great thing to be back in the States, of course. Look, from a point of view of what's an ethical gemstone, I mean, for me, it's probably the ability for the gem or the gems to be identified and determined. Every pathway along the process of extraction, cutting, processing, marketing is identifiable as what you might want to term proper practice, if you like, or best practice, and ensuring that every person that handles the gemstone is treated fairly, is rewarded appropriately, is acknowledged for the work and the effort that they put into extracting the gem and working with the gem, and essentially ensuring that the piece is reaches the market in a most efficient way possible. Possibly a way that you could look at the definition. I mean, the definition of ethical is a real difficult concept, and we all have different perceptions of what ethical means. But for me, it's probably more what it's not. And I think the gemstone industry, generally speaking, has a history of greyness, shadiness, poor practice, poor treatment of people, and inappropriate actions, poor rewards, and not acknowledging those people that extract the gemstones from the mining communities through the cutters, through the processing, and then even through to the marketing of the gemstones in a proper way. So if you look at it from a point of view of what is not ethical, that can possibly shine some light on what might be ethical. Now, as far as I'm concerned also, there is no one unilateral position on what ethical is. And it's a work in progress. It's something that is continuing to develop. And part of our group, part of what we do, is to uplift and bring much more effort and I guess imperative into ensuring that all of our gemstones have that pathway from the mine to the market that has been identified, and that those people that have extracted those gems, cut those gems, process those gems, are treated better than what they possibly have been in the past. And for us, I think us as a group of ethical gem suppliers, that's first and foremost on our mind. First and foremost on our mind to ensure that we're continuing to help identify these practices, help ensure that these practices get better over time, help ensure that those communities are properly rewarded, and funds go and proper funds go back to those communities in recognition and reward for the work that they do. So it's probably a perspective of relativity in some respects, what is ethical and what is not ethical. We all know the stories of the historical perspective of the gemstone industry, and what we're trying to do is make a difference. What we're trying to do as a group of gemstone suppliers is make a difference in the market to ensure that the people that we supply our gemstones, the designer makers, have that full background story into where that gem comes from, who mined the gem, and that all of those people along that supply chain have been appropriately acknowledged and rewarded. So that's the perspective that I take. From my personal point of view, we mine or we work with miners in central Queensland, and I suppose in some ways it's relatively easy for us to work in this space because we are a Western country and we possibly can identify some of these aspects much easier than other places. But anyway, that's probably my take on it. And now someone else can have a go, and I'll pass this on to the next person.
I'm not sure if Eric is ready or available, so maybe we will move on to Brian.
Well, that's why I couldn't say who it was, because I wasn't sure. So
That's okay.
I'll take this up.
All right,
Brian.
I'll jump in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night. Okay, so I'll pass it on to Eric. All right, now I'm kidding. So, what is an ethical gem? It's a mineral, it's people, and it's places. And it's, as Ian just explained quite nicely, it's a very long trail of participants, from the diggers to the makers and the sellers, and essentially to the consumers who end up with those pieces. So I think essentially traceability is key, and education. And so we're trying to educate, and we educate each other, including the makers and the retailers. You are part of this long trail, and it becomes a circle, because from the digger to the seller, it completes that whole path. And if we can add the elements that will include, create the stories for the end consumer, that's what we're trying to achieve. And again, it's a long trail to do that. It was 1983 when I sort of stumbled into a remote mountain range in the middle of Bahia. Bahia is the size of France. I didn't know what I was going to see or find in the way of stones, or where I was even going at the time. But what I saw, what I found, was the most exotic, beautiful crystals I'd ever laid eyes on. That's where my responsible sourcing began, and when it began, because simply I fell in love with the place and the people. It was shortly after that that I had the opportunity and the privilege to work as an exploration geologist in gold exploration, precious metals, and which led me to a lot of outback of Brazil. And I got to witness garimpeiros discovering gold, what the conditions were, camping out, burning mercury off with torches. So I had that experience. And then shortly after that, I was sidetracked. I was diverted by color and the magic of colored stones. And so my pathway led me into the gemstone industry, where I am today. And that's my focus, although I still work in exploration, but it's focused around gemstones and crystals. But I'd say that, again, that you, the participants here, the sellers, complete that circle. And it's our stories together, and we will depend on your information to help educate us on how we can make this more efficient. And, you know, we're kind of in the early stages of, as an industry, for this concept of ethical sourcing compared to other industries. But it's a movement that's important, and it's a movement that is going to make our industry relevant by doing, and so it's the actions that we all take. In my case, I'm working with a mining community in Bahia, where I have a vision for an initiative to create models that will inspire other people around the world. And it's all about giving back to the community, helping a community be sustainable. So all these subjects we're going to go over during the course of this event over the next 3 days. And all of us, I encourage everyone to don't be shy, go to the tables, meet people. You're going to meet other participants, ask questions, and join the conversation. Because as I said, you are part of this whole educational process, and we'll do this together. I guess that's what I essentially wanted to say. So be sure to visit each supplier. Go to our booths where you will find resources. Each one of us have listed resources, links, and all this, which will be very helpful. You can, and then just keep in touch with us. I will pass it on to my daughter Quendi for the next bit of this. And again, welcome everyone. Go ahead, we can hear you. I can hear you.
We hear you okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Me. Okay, there we are. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties this morning. Welcome everyone. It's so nice to be here again. We did this in February, and it's nice to see a bunch of new people have joined. I'm Quendi, as Brian said, I'm his daughter, and I grew up in this business since a baby. My first trip to the mine area was when I was about 1 or 2 years old. So I've been around this world for a long time, and witnessed quite a bit in the Brazil region. I would say that everyone sort of already iterated what ethical is. That I agree with all of it, and I think it's a word that gets tossed around, and we all have different feelings about what's attached to it. For me, ethical has everything to do with philosophy and combined with action. So if we're taking stones from the ground, it's about understanding the environmental and the humanitarian impacts that it creates on the entire process, from the ground to the market. And we're doing our best with creating relationships, and I think it has a lot to do with relationships, direct relationships with your miners and your cutters and everyone involved with every process, and understanding who they are, what the needs are in the community, and how you as a distributor or someone in the supply chain, what your part is in it. And it's really just taking on the consciousness of the environmental and humanitarian aspect of all of it. That's really in a nutshell what I think it is. And the biggest part of it is building direct relationships, which is, like my father mentioned, part of all of something that you all are part of as well, on the receiving end, the buyers and so forth. So I just wanted to say welcome and thanks for being here. We will have a chance to get to know each other better at the tables, and have very interesting conversations like we did last time. Ask all your questions. We're here to answer what we can and steer you in the direction of how to source stones that have stories, and they come from places that we all know directly. So I will pass it on to Stuart Poole of 1948, and I'm still getting awake over here in the West Coast.
Thanks, Quendi. Yes, you're all waking up, and I'm actually the exception. It's really late in the afternoon for me, so already. So I'm the UK contingent this time around for this Gem Fair, and I'm pleased to be taking part. And as Quendi said, it's great to see lots of new faces as well as some familiar faces already in the audience. So we look forward to speaking with you all over the next couple of days. Coming so far down the list, it's difficult not to just repeat many of the things that that people have been saying already about what is an ethical gemstone. I think the important things probably to remember that have already been mentioned are what Ian said about the word ethical in itself. So we have in the industry now this term of ethical gemstone, for better or for worse, really. So and unfortunately, it does mean different things to different people. So that's why we have these conversations, why to have these conversations so that you understand exactly what we are meaning by that term. Of course, it's also possible that we'll use the word responsibly sourced as an alternative. But again, it still needs a little bit of work on the definition, I guess. However, we're using that now, this phrase in the industry, so it's important to know what that's about. I think, as a few people now have mentioned, for me as well, it breaks down to usually two areas. So that's the people and the planet. And when I have this conversation with customers, which I do on a regular basis, those are the areas that people like to focus on and want to focus on. So they're looking at, on the people side, things like, obviously basic human rights, health and safety, fair pay, child labour, all of those important aspects that, again, as Ian alluded to, we haven't always done particularly well in our industry, but things are changing and we're working hard to improve in those areas. So it's important, I think, for an ethical gemstone to have addressed all of those basic issues. On the planet side, I think, of course, the environmental impact is something that people are very concerned about. And so looking at how we operate within our business and how we minimize our impact on the planet, certainly in terms of our supply chain. So that means, for me, that means the mining operations that I work with in Sri Lanka and Tanzania, and understanding how those mining operations work and what is done there to minimize their impact and to undertake things like land restoration is an important one for a lot of people. And of course, again, making sure that we're doing things with due care and consideration for the animals and the flora and the fauna, all of those kind of things in the mining areas. So those two aspects, I think, are very important when we're talking about an ethical gemstone as the foundation, if you like. I think, as Monica mentioned, the philanthropic angle is also important. So what do we do with our money, with our profits, when we make them? So are we making charitable donations? Are we feeding that back into, as Monica said, things like educational programs? So how and where is that money being used? Not just as a kind of self-serving interest for our own businesses, but for the benefit of the other people in our supply chains. Then, of course, there's our relationship with our customers, with most of you in the audience. So how we trade with you, and are we bringing to you good quality gemstones, genuine gemstones? Are we charging you a fair price? All of these things are wrapped up in this question about what is an ethical gemstone. I think when it comes to, you'll hear probably, if you speak with us over the coming days, you'll hear a lot about disclosure. So disclosure can mean not only talking about the gemstone itself, so telling you what the type of gemstone is, what the condition is, what the price, the fair price is, but also the path that it has followed from the source to you. And so then we look at the other kind of buzzwords that we have related to this question. So things like transparency, things like traceability, how much can we tell you about that gemstone, and how far can we track it back to its origins? So there are lots of things to cover when we're trying to answer this question of what is an ethical gemstone. And because I was having this conversation so frequently, we actually put together an ethical policy. So you can see 1948 ethical policy on our website, and you can see many of the areas that I've just mentioned, along with a whole lot of other things that we take into consideration when we are doing business, and when we are trading with our suppliers and working with our suppliers, and also when we're interacting with our customers. So in closing, I'd like to also reiterate that we encourage you, please, to come to our tables, to speak with us over the next few days, and to have these conversations, to ask us more and more questions so that you understand what we mean by what is an ethical gemstone. Thanks very much. And I'll pass on to Jay, I think.
Thank you, Stuart. Thanks everyone else who shared their thoughts on ethical gemstones. My name is Jay Moncada. Greetings from New York City. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to everyone who is attending. Very excited to see new faces coming into our circle. It's a sign that the messaging is out there and that you're curious and eager to learn what we are here and what we are about. Ethical gemstone for me is in this incredible journey that gems carry on from the place where they're found and what they call home in the consumer's hands, and in the final piece where it's used. We find ourselves also be incredibly relevant to how we make that journey possible while protecting the people, the environment, and the circumstances in which they are sourced. So for me, ethical gemstone is sort of the ends to the journey of responsible sourcing, right? What do I mean by responsible sourcing? Essentially is the commitment of the participants, all the stakeholders in the jewelry industry process that have put into place a process in which they can implement and demonstrate policies and practices in which they can protect the environment, they can protect the communities involved, whether it's at the source or at processing, and even further down the line in terms of participating in the sale and marketing of the gem. So I see ethical gemstone as not as a target or a point of reference, but rather as an elevated practice as a result of our commitment to sourcing materials responsibly. I am, by many aspects, very different to all of the participants here today, as I am really detached from the mining operations. What I bring to market is the idea that there is a quality, sustainable quality to repurposing or recycling gemstones that have already been mined and have already been in circulation for over hundreds of years. So the angle in which I participate to elevate the practice in responsible sourcing and bring in ethical gemstone options to you, the maker, is to provide an additional point of provenance that could carry on for that gem. We understand and we want to pursue the ideal of what's ethical, specifically because what Ian brought about. We now know all of the atrocities and all of the mishaps that has happened, and we know that that's not ethical. So we're taking an effort in bringing that to another level and maintain it to that level as the new plateau, as the new foundation for the entire market. So the work and the options that I provide for the makers is we cannot change the history, but we can create a new point of providence in which you know and you can guarantee that there was no harm to the environment and the peoples that handle the material, and you determine a point of traceability moving forward. So that is the angle that Perpetuum Jewels brings to you. We also put into place a rigorous, I'm trying to call it not too legalese, but we try to abide by standards of responsible sourcing by an environmental firm. It's a third-party auditing firm that's out there. We are certified against the standard for already 6 years. And that gives you an additional point of reference that the company is doing what it can to elevate the practice, to provide information and in terms of where it was found, how it was, what kind of historical context or point of information can carry on this gem that has been mined and faceted and polished and used many, many years ago. So very excited to be here again. This is already looking to be at least twice as exciting as last year. The topics are great. There's a lot of incredible reception. And looking forward to see you all at the tables, at the lounges, and at the booths. I'm going to need help with who to give the baton to at this point. We have Eric and Susan, who hasn't spoken yet.
Maybe Susan?
Susan, go ahead.
Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone also for being here, and I'm really excited that Virtue Gem is joining the ethical gem suppliers today, and everything that everyone says has been saying about what is an ethical gem. We all come at it with a different perspective, and I love hearing everyone's stories and agree with everyone so far. I think it is a hard question, what's an ethical gem? And we were asked, we have a Virtue Gem team of 3 founding members, Monica Gachui in Nairobi and Jessica Hudson in Hawaii. And we were caught off guard when somebody asked all 3 of us at once, and we all had a different answer. I think for Virtue Gem, in agreement with what everyone else has said, one of the things that we're finding that we believe is we found a need for, and what we're looking at in our program is really transparency and knowledge. And I'm, of course, transparency for the end consumer, but we're working a lot on transparency to the miners, to the traders within source country, and to anyone that could be a part of the gemstone industry in the source countries, because there's, there's gem identification, everyone knows about that, but just basically anything, the price structure, what we do here, what ethical gem suppliers do, what traders and suppliers in the gemstone industry do internationally, what jewelers are doing with gems, what jewelers want to see, everything from price structure. So ethical, I think, involves equity, it involves transparency, it involves knowledge, it involves things that we don't even think about sometimes. At least I don't, from where I'm sitting, and I find something that comes up, and I didn't realize that this was something that somebody else in our supply chain didn't have equity with. They weren't on the same, they're not on the same playing field in some ways. So bringing these conversations between all of us, I think is a really important and ethical thing to do. I think also we all see here, everybody that's speaking is here because they do have a connection to people in the supply chain that maybe not everybody has the availability to have that connection with. And they're all here because they believe in having understanding and in making things better, and to having gemstones really benefit everybody whose hands they touched. So thank you, and I think that we all need to just keep on thinking about this every single day that you touch a gemstone. You know, what does this mean to me, and what does this mean to everyone who's touched it? Thank you. Eric?
I guess that gets to me. Finally got my computer working at 7 o'clock in the morning, so which is early for me. Susan said that, and a number of people here have said that, you know, the term ethical means different things to different people. To this group, I don't think it does. I think if we sum it up, it means that instead of just looking at your company and the immediate company you deal with, you look at the entire supply chain. You try and find ways that will benefit your company, but also everybody along the supply chain. So it's really a different way of looking at business. It's a different business model. The traditional business model is we would just look at the person that hands me the stone. You know, how are they doing? How am I doing? You don't think about the person that cut it, the person that mined it, the person that transported it. So it's a different business model. We're trying to look at all those stages that the stones pass through and find ways that really benefit everybody along that supply chain. That's where the transparency comes in. If you don't know those, and if you and your partners, which means whether it's a miner or a cutter, they have to be transparent too. If they're not, we cannot pass along, the proper information. So it really is sort of this family as opposed to individual people dealing one-on-one. It really is a family where you're trying to deal with everybody along the supply chain. So, and then my other pet complaint is gemstones aren't ethical. People are ethical, and the people that run those companies are ethical. That's what you want to look at. They provide you stones in an ethical fashion, but gemstones are gemstones. It's nice to call them an ethical gemstone, but I prefer and really stress to people, look at what, like Jay, he's got his policies written down, they're published. What are they? Look at those and see, do they meet your goals for your company? And if they do, that's the sort of, company that you want to support. So I don't really have much to add because we've had a lot of people added in there, but, it's something we've worked in for a long time now. And it's been the core of our business for the last 20 years. Every decision we make is based on the protocols that we wrote 20 years ago and that we update each year. So with that, I guess I am going to say welcome to everybody and all the speakers, and hope you all enjoy the sessions.
That was perfect to end on, Eric, and kind of sum things up a little bit. And now, one thing that struck me was Jay's comment that we can't change history, but we can redefine and move forward with what this new definition means, and focusing on the people and the ethics and the responsibility of the chain. So. Amazing thoughts, everyone. And now we welcome everyone to the tables in the lounge, and we can kind of continue our conversations from there. So it looks like we have a few comments here. Really honored to be in this room with all the speakers, and also people who are tuning in and who want to learn more and want to kind of educate themselves in whatever direction they need to go. So I think we'll head to the tables and continue the conversation. So thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Talk to you again.
Yes, you'll see a lot of us in the next couple of days. So
that's right.
Be sure to check out the session's topics so that you can actually choose what you want to tune into, when to tune into, and hopefully it works for your time zone. So thank you, everyone. See you soon.
All right. See you at the tables.